In this lecture, we will discuss prohibited and unacceptable risk systems. While this type of risk is not explicitly defined, there are examples that we will look at. You will need to remember those examples for the exam, so I've created a mnemonic device to aid your memorization. And we will conclude by looking at some exceptions to these prohibitions. Again, prohibited or unacceptable risk, you can think of these two terms as synonymous. This type of risk is not explicitly defined. However, examples are provided. And those examples are social credit scoring, systems that manipulate behavior, for example, by circumventing free will or providing subliminal messaging, emotion recognition systems used in education and the workplace, specific applications of predictive policing, systems that are exploitative of, for example, age or disability, the untargeted scraping of facial images, and biometric categorization and identification. For biometric categorization and identification, systems are prohibited, specifically those using sensitive characteristics or by law enforcement in public, unless a limited pre-authorized exception exists. Again, there's some nuance here, and if I were a sinister question writer, this is where I would try and trip people up. To help you remember these examples of prohibited systems, I've created another mnemonic device for you, and that mnemonic device is 6 mummies eagerly pat elephant's underbelly. Now, for whatever reason, in my experience working with image generators, I typically have a lot of difficulty with prompts that involve animals for some reason. I wanted to get all 6 of the mummies underneath the elephant, but for the life of me, that just didn't happen. This was the best I could get, and I think probably after a couple hours, I was at my wit's end. And so I understand not all 6 of the mummies are underneath the elephant, but we've got 66.6666%, and that's good enough for me. So the mnemonic device here, again, 6 for social credit, mummies for manipulative, eagerly for emotion recognition, etc., etc. For the exam, I would imagine seeing a description of a system, and you're asked to determine whether or not the system is in compliance with the EU AI Act. Well, if that system being described is a prohibited system, then no, it is not in compliance if it is operational. Exceptions to prohibited and unacceptable risk systems include law enforcement of real-time biometric identification in public spaces. So if there's a targeted, pre-authorized use case, then that would be permissible. Targeted search for victims of abduction or human trafficking. Prevention of specific imminent threats, for example, of a terrorist attack. And detection and prosecution of serious crimes. And serious crimes would include terrorism, sexual exploitation of children, murder, drug trafficking, etc. In this lecture, we went over prohibited and unacceptable risk systems. Remember, there is no explicit definition of this type of risk, but examples are provided. I will not reread this list of systems here. Of course, you can hit pause and read at your leisure. I would absolutely commit these to memory. I know it's a long list, but hopefully that mnemonic device helps you. And here's the mnemonic device, 6 mummies eagerly pat elephant's underbelly. And you should remember the exceptions as well. And in each of these cases, this would be some type of law enforcement or national security purpose.